Okay, so I'm recording this, and I've made a few changes to try and make sure that the last week the audio did not record from my laptop, even though we could hear each other. So the link I posted, unfortunately, some folks went to watch it and didn't have audio. Hopefully this week won't be the same. So yeah, the question was about the maintainer trimming. It was really just a heads up since OCI kicked off in whatever 2015, and then some of them hadn't had a lot of activity, like image and runtime spec haven't had a lot of activity since 2017 when we went V1 with those two specs. Where it's the I like a lot about the governance of how we set up OCI. It's opinionated and fair, and it's got a few things that had made some people grumble, and it's still kind of awkward. Of like no more. It favors having like whoever is the person that has those responsibility. It's you personally bear it. It's not just the company you work for. But at the same time, it also pays heed to not letting certain companies just overpower the conversation. So like various roles, you can't have like too many seats held by people who work for the same company. That's the biggest place we've seen that is when Red Hat acquired CoreOS. Then there was some reshuffling, and then when IBM acquired Red Hat, there was more shuffling.
You got to stop acquiring the maintainers.
Seriously, yeah. But the biggest thing has been that there's a few contexts in which, particularly like voting for the releases of specs, it's in the docs that it's not just a majority has to LGTM, which when we did that, when I put up for the runtime spec 1.0.2 the other week, we had 4 out of 8 LGTMs, but we, per the governance or whatever for the spec versions, had to have a 2/3 quorum. And so 4 people just in the last 2 years are not active at all. They're not checking anything about OCI in their inbox, either because they're not working in it anymore or they've changed companies or whatever. The email, in some situations in the past, the emails have bounced because people no longer worked at the company their email was with. So that was more or less just administrative stuff that I was airing in the open so that there's no indication that it's done behind the scenes or managed, like in some special way. And the way that I handled that is that immediately after that conversation, I went to the maintainers file for the runtime spec and started a private email between the 8 people, just so that they didn't have to feel like this is a public public archive conversation, to just see, like, is there, as a, one-to-one, is this something you're still interested or able to do or whatnot? And from that, a couple of people, were able to be like, actually, this is something I can't do anymore. So Vishnu from Google, and Brandon Phillips, who is CoreOS, now Red Hat, now IBM. Both of them, we had PRs merged to remove them. So now the runtime spec has a maintainer base of 6, which is not great for quorum pieces. It could deadlock a vote or whatever, but at least if we put up a motion for a vote again and the 4 active maintainers voted again, that things wouldn't be stalled out or deadlocked. That's all. I'm sure the same might happen if you look at some projects like Go Digest. It's a software, not spec project, but most of the people in that maintainers file are not participating regularly. It's just something to be aware of, cycling in and out so that progress can stay happening. That's all.
Thank you. Sounds great.
If there's ever any time that somebody's actually helping or interested in that, feel free to propose yourselves. But it's just routine project liveliness. So if there's not any questions of that, we can move on to actual topics. Yeah. So call for action for any update to Runcie Hook implementation. Who added that topic? Anybody? Going once, going twice. Call for action on Runcie hooks. I have a drive-by topic agenda.
Was that the one that didn't get merged because there was no quorum, not enough LGTMs?
Well, that's what I was just looking. We actually got a runtime spec had I feel like almost a 1 year or more conversation about that on the spec side, and the hook side was largely, I guess, this one that was opened. Hold on. I guess this one. Paste the link in the docs.
Hi all, sorry I'm late.
Oh, hello. Who's that?
Alexa.
Oh, hello. How early is it for you? You actually got out of bed, man.
I mean, it's only 9 in the morning, calm down.
I mean,
That's pretty early for some people, but yeah. Was that topic?
I mean, it is pretty early for me.
Is it your topic, I'm guessing, about the hooks?
Yeah.
All right, so I just pasted, if you see in the chat doc or wherever, the HackMD notes. Are we talking about 1811 pull request? Alexa?
Yeah. Yes, I can just start. So I don't know if you mentioned it already, but effectively, yeah. Now that we have the hooks API, now that we have the hooks stuff merged for the thing, yeah, I was just a call to action to make sure that they'll get reviewed, and all the people who are interested in it double check that because obviously I don't have all the NVIDIA setups that I need to test that the hooks work for NVIDIA. So yeah, it would be good if any folks who either use the NVIDIA hooks or use some other custom hooks can play around with the PR and also give it a review. Would be really good. Because yeah, I mean, I can only test it as much as I can say, is this conformant with the spec? Is basically the only thing that I can really test, because I don't have any of the hardware necessary for some of the more esoteric hooks that that are fairly widely used nowadays.
Yeah, so let's see here. I forget all the people from NVIDIA that were involved there, and I know like even Rajat Chopra, what was his GitHub handle? Rajat Chopra, jeez. So that pull request, besides needing to be rebased, hasn't had any conversation since last October.
No, I haven't. I haven't looked at it. Yeah,
I'm not
might
sure
have to carry it.
that Dong Su is the one that opened the PR, but I have no idea, and I almost doubt that he's the one that's going to champion it through. Somebody might have to carry it and rebase it.
Yeah, I mean, worst case, I can just carry it and rebase it. But yeah, I mean, Dongsu was the reason why we actually managed to get the hook stuff over the line, because he approached me at, I think it was All Systems Go, and was like, lol, can we please get this merged? And I was like, all right, fine. Yeah.
Sure. Well, him and Renault.
Yeah.
Who is? Oh, it looks like he's also Renault is working on it in GPU stuffs. So let me ping him in that.
Yeah.
FLX42. I don't know. Today. What was the? Do we have a link to the? 1008.
Yeah. But,
Session is merged. You will have a spec shortly. Containers. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
yeah. That was basically the thing I wanted to say with regards to hooks. Is just getting people to, especially folks who actually use some weird hooks in production, that they should go and double check that that they're okay with, either with staying with the old ones, but ideally they would migrate to the newer ones. Is the main thing.
Yeah, and somebody asked about that on the runtime spec. Even should like how and whether we should is deprecating a part of what we should do with any of the old ones. But
yeah, that's gonna be a whole other thing with yeah, because of the whole Semver thing, we need to bump to 2.0, which is a bit overkill, to be honest. We have to bump 2.0, which is overkill.
If we actually deprecated the old ones.
As in, like, remove them. If we deprecate them, I think you could do it with like a minor bump. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, long term we should bump them, but I think that going for actual removal, I think is going to be something that we have to think about much longer. Because it's probably not good form for you to have like a spec that you've released 1.0 after like 3 years of work, and then 1.01, and then 2.0 seems a little bit
Nasty.
But yeah. I just want to mention one thing with regards to. I'm sorry. Later. I just want to mention something with regards to the maintain and trimming stuff.
Yep.
One other thing that is a possible consideration is that is a problem. We should push people to put themselves forward as candidates for new maintainers. The one thing is that, and this is something that we should probably discuss as like an actual like change to how we I don't know if it's a charter, but change with regards to how we do reviews. I think one thing that actually is causing runs releases for run C are very annoying to do. Now, for specs, sense to have the whole voting thing, because in principle, the way the votes are meant to solve a particular problem, which is you want to make sure holders specs. But for an actual project like the whole voting thing means that we ended up delaying releases by God knows how long. Luckily, we've never had a release not happen because of a number of maintainers. But I think this happened in image tools recently, where I think there's been 2 attempts at getting a new RC release done, and it just didn't happen because there weren't enough people voting. And so I think
how's that? Which aspect of Run C is it? Is it the? Let's see.
Which aspect of Run C is what?
The Run C voting. Which aspect of that? I thought there's only the specs that have kind of like the 2/3 quorum. Is Run C the same? I'm not a maintainer on Run C.
It is the same. We basically took it from the spec, and actually that's actually how all OCI projects currently work. And I think that's a mistake. I think that we should just go to like.
I thought it was just
like a normal release
specs.
model.
I'll have to look.
Yeah.
Because I know that.
I think on paper only specs are meant to be that way, but I think that every project has done it that way. So.
Okay.
But yeah.
So I don't know if that we'll have to. We can just make that clear, because I think that in the charter it says it's only the specs, and like I know that they've done releases on like lib se Linux and might have even done it for some of the like image tools or runtime tools without having the 2/3 quorum.
Yeah, I think SE Linux does releases without it, but image tools and runtime tools do it with the votes. I think if we just clarify that that's not necessary, then we can just do it in a more sane way. I mean, I think it would be nice for us to have like a standard way of doing releases across all OCI projects. Like,
Sure.
and it's all done by either like some sort of, there's not enough people for it to be like a release team, but like you have, 1 or 2 people who are responsible for doing releases each release or whatever. And there has to be like a couple of days stew period or something. But I think that the quorum thing is a bit silly because, for instance, actually right now, image tools has been broken in Debian for like 2 years now because image tools was split out from image spec, the version number decreased, and so they're requesting updates to like 1.0 RC3 or something to fix this problem. But because there hasn't been a vote, it's been broken in Debian for like, So I think that it's if we just clarify that it's necessary, then I mean, like I can push the release right now for image. But yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to mention with that is
So looking at the thing, how decisions are made in the maintainer's guide. It's not clear. It's not as clear even in Run C as it is for some of the other ones. They have like a governance doc.
Right, but I mean, like this document mentions chief maintainer and all the rest of it, which is like that's from the Docker days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crosby.
Yeah, that was last touched in 2016. But yeah, I get your point. It's I think I will double check the charter to make sure that it's not specified in the charter. But if it's not specified in the charter, then we can put in we can just add a thing to the governance doc for the OCI org. It just mentions like the quorum rules are only for the specs. I think would be sufficient.
I wonder if we've, at the bottom of it, it even says that maintainers can only be removed by 66% quorum, which is good. You can find yourself in a funny scenario there.
Yeah, with the chief maintainer having veto power, which
That's cute. Interesting.
Yeah.
Tianan, what do you say?
I mean, I think
You're staying quiet. I expected you to have piped up at this point. Say something.
Yeah, sure. Something.
There you go.
Something. No, I think
Sounds good to me.
for the runtime spec, we have this exact problem, right? And the way Vincent has resolved it is by reaching out to said maintainers and saying, "Hey, you're inactive. Can you please step down?" And they made the PR themselves. So I think
More or
that's why
less.
we didn't worry about 66%, because if they're saying, "I want to step down," who are we to stand in their way, right? But I guess it's more complicated when they're AWOL, like we have some on the runtime spec that are just totally AWOL, haven't replied to Vincent. So it's harder.
Yeah. I mean, for Run C, I also dropped, we dropped two maintainers who were also inactive, and I reached out to them and all the rest of it. So I think that's worked for most projects. But yeah, if you
The last one was Victor Marmol, and he was, gosh, that's forever ago. But yeah, like Daniel Dow, he's not been around in a while.
Yeah, he hasn't. Yeah, I see him once in a while, but yeah, I think he's busy with other things at the moment, or has been for a while. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like vis-a-vis, if you're running low on active maintainers for runtime spec, I can volunteer myself since I'm still fairly active in that community. But we can discuss that later. We can discuss that on GitHub. We don't have to discuss it now. All right.
Yeah, I didn't bring that up specifically because we're low. I mean, I think we're okay. I think, honestly, if anything, we had too many was the problem.
Yeah.
And they weren't responding, so we couldn't cut a release.
Yeah. And the only other thing that I think is kind of comedic sometimes is that sometimes the maintainers are the ones that are proposing PRs. Not always, obviously. Things are very active, but some things that we like come to an agreement and we want to push through, and then we don't have enough active maintainers even to get LGTMs in a timely manner. That one's cute.
And there is something to be said about that. If you're not active, we should have something written, because, I mean, even the artifact stuff was, I just started it and I was having a hard time getting responses from people that said they wanted to be maintained. Then we didn't get responses. So we need a general, I don't know if CNCF or Linux Foundation already has some verbiage that helps address inactivity, but it seems like we need something.
Yeah, it sounds like it's time to revisit the charter, frankly.
Which is exciting for everybody. God, we love working with charters.
Paperwork.
Pseudo-democracy. But yeah, I was gonna say the other option, with regards to getting LGTMs on PR. I mean, I originally pushed for disallowing self LGTMs, and I think on balance that was actually a bad idea, because I think that if a maintainer pushes a patch, especially if the patch has been already has some sort of consensus elsewhere, it's a bit annoying to have to wait for people to go to the GitHub notifications to LGTM it. Like, it's just weird. And not to mention that, like, maintainers can push to master. Like, I wouldn't say it's formality. I mean, the point of it is to get review and all the rest of it. But I think, you know, if a maintainers already pushed a change, they understand the code well enough that they only need one more review. But I don't know, that's a whole nother topic.
Okay.
I don't want to open that can of worms again, even though I just did.
Yeah.
That a problem.
Sorry?
Maintainers aren't active. I mean, if we had active maintainers, that part of what Vincent was referring to was not having one person or one company dominate something, is by having other maintainers is pretty helpful. But if they're not active, then it does create that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, maybe we should have like a drive. I was gonna say, basically try to get newer maintainers who are interested. I mean, there are some folks like I don't know what their real name is, but H Ventinari has been reviewing PRs a lot in runtime spec. I mean, like, if they'd be up to it, I'd be down for it. Because I think the problem is that we haven't added. I mean, I think that except for new projects, all of the old projects haven't added maintainers in like 3 or 4 years. From memory. Oh no, yeah, Image Spec added me 2 years ago, I think, and that's the last time I remember a maintainer being added. and there's like, in terms of new blood, there hasn't been anyone for at least a couple of years who's a maintainer. So I think that another problem is that people start working on other things, and we haven't replaced the outflux of maintainers with new ones, as well as the fact that we have maintainers who are in the maintainers file but that basically stopped working on what they used to maintain. So yeah, I think it's not just a matter of getting coming out maintainers who are no longer working on the project, but it's also a matter of getting new people in. You don't have to, because on paper the quorum requirement is a bit of a pain, but for the 2 LGTM requirement, having more maintainers helps that. Active maintainers, obviously. Anyway,
Agreed.
that's just my view, though.
Good. I'll probably will have to have a thread with in a sec about that. Or not just I, we, somebody, all of us. Cool. And then Mochi, you got the second update there.
Yeah. This is something I just wanted to mention that, I'm going to submit a proposal to have Mochi put in OCI, given there's discussions about it, and given that it's fairly widely used nowadays. And there needs to be a discussion about merging image tools in Mochi, because obviously the verification stuff that image tools does is quite useful. So I think not just useful, but also basically necessary from an OCI, from a charter standpoint or script table standpoint. So I think I'll post. I was going to mention that I'll post PR to the TOB, but I think the only thing that there are 2 open things. One of them is maintainers again. This is a call for action. If you would like to be a maintainer of Mochi, we can discuss it. Because right now the only maintainer is me. And
Tycho is definitely interested.
Sorry?
Tycho is definitely interested. He's trying to join the call right now. But he just said he's interested in possibly helping to maintain that.
Oh, so Tycho.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'd be down for Tycho to join. I mean, he's written some stuff for it before, and we've had discussions about the design. Tycho is actually a brilliant person to maintain it as well.
Hi, I'd also just joined the call, so I'd be happy
Tycho.
to.
Yeah, I was giving you praises. Yeah. No, definitely you can maintain it.
Don't do that while he's on the call.
Yeah. But I think once we have a couple of maintainers, then we can do it. And vis-a-vis releases, I will check the charter, but if the charter doesn't say that releases have to go with the voting thing, then I'll just keep releasing in Mochi the way I've done it before, which is just your release whenever you need to do a release, and there's not really much fanfare about it.
Yeah.
And I asked Vincent if you want to be. Vincent, you can be maintainer if you like as well, because he touched it a little bit, but up to you. Anyway, that's. Sure. I think maintainers is one thing. And I think with at least 2 people, I think is enough for it to sort of be put in, to be put forward. And then the other thing, is merging the validation stuff. I mean, I'd be down to just literally just merge, subtree merge the validation scripts from image tools, or maybe even make it a Mochi validate. I don't know what's the best. We can discuss that in the
that's the thing with
report.
image tools. I think that's really the only thing that people use it for. That and some of the, I think people had tried to use it for the unpacking or converting, but Mochi does that already better.
I mean, that's the reason why I wrote Mochi in the first place.
Subtree merge that logic and then put it out to pasture, archive it on GitHub.
Yeah. And there's things about the image tool stuff that I need to fix. For instance, the validation requires pulling stuff from the internet, so we need to there are things there that need to be fixed, but because of inactive maintainers and all the rest of it, they haven't been touched. So I mean, obviously, I'm one of the maintainers who is, so I mean, I'm sort of blaming myself on this one, but yeah, it's like, I think if it's part of a more active and widely used project, we can get more active development and possibly even more active other maintainers who are also interested. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say for much.
Yeah, I'm keen on it because people use it, and it's pretty much serving the purpose that I think a few people had hoped for image tools to become. But yeah, I'm curious on the releases, because I think we got that's pretty much the same issue that we're seeing in a couple places. Right now, I need to do I mentioned a couple of weeks ago doing a release for Go Digest, and the thing that we want to get in there before making a 1.0 release, which is literally just updating the copyrights. The copyrights are still the old one from when the code base was moved over, and it's a really cute lineup of maintainers. It's like a walk down memory lane to look at all the Go Digest maintainers there.
Yeah.
But as far as Emoji, yeah, since put the proposal up. I think you'd mentioned that near the end of the year, and then time got away.
So I'm new to this project. Is the plan then to merge Umochi into the image tools repo, or to keep it separate, but migrate all the conformance tests from image tools into Umochi?
The second one. So what we'll do is that so that we can preserve the history of both, we'll basically, like on GitHub, move the repo from OpenSUSE to Open Containers, and then we'll do a manual, like it's called a subtree merge, basically, where you take the history of one repo and then jam it into another repo, and then we'll just take the conformance bits from image tools, because that's the main thing that that people use it for, and it's the thing that Umochi doesn't do at the moment. So yeah, that would be the plan. But I mean, if another option might even be to make like an Umochi subcommand for validation or conformance. I really don't have an opinion either way on that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have an opinion either. I just want to know where it's going.
Yeah, and then probably we'll just archive the image tools repo on GitHub afterwards, since all of it will live in Umochi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just double checking, even looking at the list of names that were. OCI Image Tools has 12 maintainers currently.
Yeah.
Brandon Phillips, Brendan Burns, usually. And really the only ones that were active in the last couple of years were the
Yeah, actually that is the new block. That's right. Yeah, so I think they were added fairly recently. Speaking in OCI terms, fairly recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were doing some work, but I think that the inability to get releases done sort of made them stop working on things, stop being interested in it, which I think is fair enough. I mean, if you can't get a release done after 3 attempts.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if we just rip that project apart. I know you have some brand, name association with Emochi at this point because you've been talking about it, but
yeah. And I mean, I will say that the one thing that the main argument I have for basically archiving image tools is that and pointing people from image tools to Mochi is that the extraction codes, the extraction generation code for image tools is like completely broken. And it's just because it's written in like the simplest way that it could be. But it doesn't work. The reason why I wrote Umochi is because the extraction code just doesn't work. Like it doesn't correctly do timestamps. It does a bunch of things incorrectly. Yeah. That's,
sure.
that's the argument I have for it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's where my only thought was: is it if merging them together, which direction the merge goes, like shared subtree rebasing and wiping out one project with another. I don't think that OCI Image Tools has any brand or momentum or whatever if people are importing from it. And even with the funny name, there's probably more people using Emoji. So how to give credence and effectively put those two together, whether that means bringing in a new project or what. Is really, at the end of the day, fixing one implementation's broken approach with another is just a merge away. So,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, figure out your idea on that, and I'll expect to see an email to the TOB one way or the other.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about that? Cool. And then lastly, I'm glad that you put it as a topic, Steve, because I've had two disparate things asked me about what's the status of artifacts, OCI artifacts this week. So I'll be curious to hear your update on, or what you have to say there.
Yeah, one of them was actually, I think, a loop back to some stuff that you've been referring to. Let me just paste this in here. I'm trying not to chase your, there we go. Okay, chase your cursor there. So first of all, it has been a little dormant because we've been busy with the notary stuff and others. And the first thing I should mention is, similar to the conversation prior, is making sure we have enough maintainers on it. So just because I'm busy with something else doesn't stall it. So that is one of the first things that I'm working on. There's a couple of people that have asked to be part of it and that will be active. So that's one of the things that I want to work on. The other was the blocking part of artifacts was, how do we deal with the root media type? So I did spend some time reading through the IANA.org. That's how you would pronounce it or whatever. And it looks extremely promising. So for people that already know it, it's like, duh. For me, I just hadn't gotten to it and I was just following the pattern. So I need to continue finishing reading through it and actually go through the process, because there is quote experts that have to approve things, and I don't know exactly how that works. So I want to continue to make progress there. And I believe that is the last thing that was kind of blocking us getting to a point where Helm and others can actually finalize what their media type is, so that we can actually kind of declare it a 1.0 so people can start using it. I know that a couple of the other clouds are actively working on, and vendors also are actively working on supporting that. So we want to get that out there and actually get Helm and others to have a solid media type that they could use. What builds atop that is in the notary conversations, without making this a notary conversation, we've been talking about, like, how do we integrate all these different things together? So we want to sign artifacts that are in the registry. Those artifacts are obviously container images, but there are also things like SBOMs, so that I have a list of content and I know what is in that artifact, because some things you can't tell by scanning it. You actually only know if you write that out beforehand, like what compiler maybe compiled the code, as well as what packages are in it, so that we can look back and say, we know that this package has a vulnerability. We only discovered the package has a vulnerability today, but what about the content that was deployed last month? And of course, having this SBOM is only valid if it can be signed. So, excuse me, So that's kind of the aspect there. And then the recent conversation we've also been having is, great, I've got these, what if I want to constrain my environment to only support MySQL 7.1 and above? Well, we don't really want to make that enforcement obviously part of Notary. Notary is just saying it is what it says it is. What it is, we don't care. Should we look at stuff like Open Policy Agent as one of policy enforcements that can validate that or enforce some policy? So we've been thinking about this from an end-to-end, and basically back to the artifacts, it says things like SBOMs and OPAs, and even the last one, I'll come to the GPL for a lot of these licenses, it requires source to be in the same location as the binary. It doesn't have to be with the binary. And I think this is the thing that you were mentioning a couple of times, Vincent, because our open source legal team came to me and was like, hey, how do we close the loop on some of this information? Talking to one of the people over at one of the Red Hat IBM companies, I can't remember where he mentioned it. And basically what the thought process there is, the source for the package can be put as an artifact in the registry. And whether we're using indexes to reference these things or otherwise, you can pull the image. Legally, the source is there, but you don't have to pull the source to the deployment because that just bloats your deployment package. But for the legal constraints, all the content is there.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Are you
the
talking
project that I've
about
been working
using
on for a while.
Are you talking about using
and-
descriptors, sorry?
Yeah.
With this,
Yeah.
okay.
The initial naive implementation is actually I'm finishing a write-up of the layout right now, but the naive implementation is actually putting different source into the layer tarballs. So even naive old client tools can push and pull them to registries and stuff like that. But the next approach would be effectively to have them enumerated as their own descriptor with their own MIME type. So, application / VND / dot, RPM or whatever, XRPM. So it'd be a source RPM pushed right at the registry, or, whatever its MIME type is, so that it wouldn't be runnable. It wouldn't need to even ever touch a graph storage driver of a container runtime. It would just be fetched and unpacked because you'd see that this thing is a certain MIME type.
Or you don't have to, right? You know it's there because it's legally there, so you can get it from however we use index or otherwise. Just its own artifact in there, and we know we can scan it separately. The Docker tools or container D tools or whatever tools, Mochi tools, don't have to pull it. So it really makes for a great use case. And then as a registry, whatever package you pick, there's probably a couple of thousand, if not more, images in that registry that reference it. And because most of us do various types of deduping, we could all keep track of it's pointing to the thing, but we don't need to have hundreds of thousands of copies of that same source for the same package. So to me, it's just a great example. Like he was, showed me a slide with a bunch of pictures, and some of the named references he put on there might be a little bit differently, but functionally it's what distribution already supports. And with the artifact stuff, all it does is just put some semantic meaning to some of the stuff that they were doing.
Yep. And as far as like the functionality, it plays the same as like a multi-arc image would.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so that was just the quick update. I do, while we're busy getting Notary going, I didn't want to be slack on the artifact stuff in addition to just all the stuff we've been really busy here for the beginning of the year. So I just wanted to give a quick update. I don't know if I could promise a date by which I'm trying to get some of this stuff done, because the IANA stuff is a little long, but it has all the roots of everything that seemed to make perfect sense.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry.
oh, no.
Yeah, I had, I guess, 2 questions, or one is more of like a comment / thing we might have to do. the first one is that vis-a-vis, so with regards to it being a descriptor and all the rest of it, that does make sense. The only thing is that well, you can like hard code optional pulling for the source descriptors. But I do wonder whether or not it might make sense at some point to have a discussion about whether or not we should have like quote unquote optional descriptors or something like that. I don't know if that would be super useful, but it might be something to consider. And that was the first thing, and then the second. Well, actually, sorry, there's three things. The second thing is let's imagine that I'm Red Hat or SUSE or Canonical or something, and I'm shipping my base images or some derivative images based on base image. OpenSUSE is the best example of this because we have the OBS, which is publicly accessible. But it doesn't really matter. The point is that you have some user generates an image or we generate an image. The sources are stored in OBS. Is it the case that should we have a discussion about whether it should be possible for us to just say, rather than saying it's in the registry, we say it's at this location with this digest. So it's not in the registry, but it's at this other location.
Yeah,
because you mentioned that there's a legal problem with
some of the conversations even from. Yeah, because I mean, rightfully so. Some of the folks like on the Quay team balked at this because they don't want all the shit pushed at them. And if you had something like, because right now we're just abusing the image manifest. So when you see the array of layers, they're not file system layers per se. You'd have to walk through the MIME types and treat each object accordingly. And so even if we have this array of sources and you see the digest, the SHA-256 digest of it or whatever, if there was some, either abusing the URL field or some annotation to say, here's where you can find that same object. The legal distinction, the only thing that it makes my brain hurt when dealing with some of the lawyers is the LGPL version 2, section 1, subsection D, I think it is, if I'm remembering correctly.
I can feel the pain in your voice.
The works, the source of a works, the works being the binaries, the source of the works should be available in equivalent access. So as a distinction from some of the other like MIT and GPL and otherwise that just say the sources have to be generally available, that license in particular, and I think there's a couple other that have copied that wording, equivalent access, lawyers are saying should generally mean that it's fetched in the same way that the binaries are fetched. So if you pull an image, and the same client tools that should be able to pull an image should in likeness be able to pull the sources of that image. So if we did do some kind of like redirection to here's this thing here's the digest of the thing and here's a URL that you might be able to find it, should be likewise available for pulling the image without a lot of like pervasive changes needed. So it's kind of walking a fine line there of not a technical problem, just a, what makes lawyers comfortable, which is a topic I don't think anybody likes to talk about.
Yeah. In that case, we can go to my last question, which is a technical question. So I don't want to block this at all on other things that we'd like to get done. But one thing I just want to make sure of is that with quote unquote OCI v2 or like the new archive format, I would just want to be able to double check that the bill of materials that you're talking about would be usable for that, because I mean if you can just because with the tar archives basically you sort of trust the builder to generate a valid set of bill of materials. But with OCI v2 or like any other like open, not open, but transparent format for OCI, you could actually do the all of the checking just purely based on the OCI level metadata. So you could actually verify that the bill of materials is actually complete for the entire archive. And yeah, one thing I just want to double check is, and we can have a discussion about this elsewhere, is that the bill of materials format we use, that we're going to use for this, for the old style images or the current style images, would also work equally well for the other one. Because it would be silly to have to now migrate bill of materials in like a year or two if we end up getting the new format. So that's just one thing I wanted to bring up.
No, that's one of the things that I've liked about the SBOM is I see the two things working together very closely.
So there's a couple different angles, right? There's from a distribution, like from a registry operator and the distribution spec. There's part of me that's like, if I wear that hat as the Azure CR person, and with Sam and others, equally kind of think about it from that perspective. We don't really care what's stored in it. We just want to know what it is, so we can help customers understand what's in this storage system and help scanners understand when they're scanning it. We love the SBOM. Then when I branch out, I love the SBOM and OPA and all these other things that can actually pull together really solid end-to-end lifecycle scenarios. But then we quickly get into like what is the right one to bet on and bet on it heavily. So for instance, the 3T SBOM, as now it's being referred to, because SBOM is too generic. There's a group that's working on it. I happen to participate when I have time in it, and it sounds good. But Red Hat's been working on theirs, which I think they've had for a longer time. Just because one does well shouldn't exclude the other. So the thing that makes me a little nervous is thinking the distribution spec would have to would endorse a particular one and then have to support it, as opposed to the artifact approach says, hey, we can store things alongside an artifact, and it could be the 3T SBOM, it could be the IBM SBOM, and then the tooling around it just says it knows how to work with these various different types of formats. And then the individual ecosystems can evolve on their own without, to your point, having to revolutionize the spec over time. Just getting an index to have a media type has been a big discussion, and just getting artifacts to pretty much demonstrate how the original OCI index and manifest were designed are pretty flexible and support 99% of what we're already asking for. Because getting that has been hard. I worry about trying to get an SBOM schema format approved as part of OCI distribution.
So I have a question about this. Sorry. So, I mean, talking about SBOMs, it sounds to me like y'all are heading towards a media type that specifically says SBOM, not a generic media type like, text or JSON or, one of those like web conforming.
No, they will be
types.
Yeah, sorry. So that's part of the thing, is that even if it had a media type that was application / whatever SBOM.version1, that is irrespective of the fact that it itself is just JSON or whatever.
So
that's just a way because to have an idea of how you're going to parse this thing or what to expect. Because if I just get a descriptor that says text or octet stream, I have no idea. Like that's not helpful.
But Nisha, take it one step further. Let's just say, and I'm not even suggesting yours, I know you're working on stuff as well. And let's say IBM one. There could be 3 SBOMs. So there would be IBM, VND IBM SBOM. There would be 3T SBOM. There'd be Nisha SBOM. I'm just making up something here. The point is that registries know how to store different artifact types. They can say what they are, and then tooling can come along and says, oh, I know how to handle these two of the 3 SBOMs, and then it could go on and do its thing. And the idea is that we can store things, the things should be named so that various tooling can understand them. And SBOM's a category that we all want, but I don't know if we'll be able to get everybody to agree to one. So from an artifact and a registry perspective, we don't need to bet on which one. We just say we enable all of them. They just have to declare their media types.
Yeah, I
I
understand
disagree.
that part.
No, sorry,
Go
you
ahead.
don't talk about it. I'll explain it.
So
Sorry, you go ahead.
I was gonna say that okay, that makes sense from a higher level perspective. I am having a hard time figuring out how one would describe these properties of all the artifacts that are stored, whether they're SBOMs or whatever, in the image, such that a tool would be able to figure out, okay, I found this media type. What kind of media type is it, and can I do anything with it, or should I ignore it?
So I think Alexa was trying to jump in there before I.
Also, we're right at time, so
yeah.
be quick
Okay,
and we'll wrap
right.
up.
So to answer your question, the way that at least the way I imagine it work is that you have just like media type is the media type for the T bomb, and then the tool understands that if it knows that media type and knows how to handle it, and it handles it, otherwise it ignores it, which is basically how media types are handled within the spec already. Is basically the entire idea of having a media type is that you can specify, you can have extensions to the OCI spec which aren't in the actual image spec that different tools can support, completely separate from OCI. So like you have, like for instance, Cisco uses, they use SquashFS instead of TAR for their layers. That's something that you can do just by changing the media type of the layers from TAR to SquashFS. And now other tools don't support that, but that's an extension outside the spec. The thing that I disagree with when it comes to the bill of materials stuff, in that we should support, sorry, not that we should support all of them, but that we should not explicitly support one. My problem with this is that while this is okay, or this viewpoint was reasonable when it comes to like Helm charts and things, where we're like, I don't care what it is, it's data, I'll store it, whatever. My problem with it is scanning and having package lists or bills of material for images is something that basically every build tool cares about, or at least every build tool that you're likely to see. I mean, distribution build tools all care about that. So at the very least, base images for basically every distribution already have a mechanism in some way to generate a package list. I mean, in OpenSUSE, we have OBS generates this for you. I'm sure Red Hat has a similar thing. Canonical, everyone has a similar thing. So I think that the ability to know what's inside an image is, I think, much more fundamental to what defines an image, to the point where actually I think we should have a bill of materials, which is something we endorse within the image spec. Now, I would be fine with us having like 2 or 3 options, in the same way that in principle, like we have multiple like compression algorithms we support within OCI, within the image spec. I think that similarly we should have we should say these are 2 bill of material types that every tool support if it supports bill of material scanning, or this is one that everyone support if you support bill of material scanning. Because I think the risk you run with having like a laissez-faire approach to just something that's pretty core, in my opinion, to what makes an image an image, what makes an image builder an image builder, is that you end up with balkanization of effectively different camps doing different things, and now we have to have discussions about, well, does that mean that now if you're an image building tool, you have to use all 5 bill of material types that are known to man, because you're not sure if the consumer will support one of them. And I would like to avoid that if possible. But I say your point that it's, given all the pain stuff with artifacts, I can see why you'd be like, well, we just do the minimal amount possible. I do understand the concern, but that's something I wanted to flag, and that it's a concern I have when it comes to yeah.
It's a great thing. Think about it this way. All I'm saying is I don't think that we should stall the project by trying to pick one, because I don't know if IBM, SUSE, and the 3T SBOM group will even agree on one. And if they can, awesome. Like, I'm almost saying we can support any of them and let that community, that are working across the end to end, figure out what's the right one. Like, is JPEG the right format? Is it bitmap? Is it GIF or GIF? Whatever. The point is I just want to let that standard kind of build on its own, and we can support any of them. When there's a standard that is adopted as the best, then what I would imagine is things like build tools and containerd and whatever these core artifact tools will probably adopt one, and then they'll have the options for others, but there'll be some core. So I just want to make sure that we can support whatever one that's chosen. And if there's 2 or 3, we can support that too. But I agree with you. The too many choices, is the death of it. I just don't, even though I'm involved in one of the groups, I don't think I can stand up and say that this is the winning one that we should bet on.
And I will say, I mean, to be fair, from a distribution standpoint, I agree that you shouldn't really care. I guess my argument is more from the image spec viewpoint of like, given that if we want to make image scanning like a very core feature, we would want to start putting stuff in image spec related to scanning, especially with OCI 2, once that's in a ready state. But yeah.
I think if we think about those, one proposal that I think Vincent's been talking about, probably related to this, is should an SBOM be an optional layer so that it actually goes with the core artifact, but when I'm trying to deploy to a garbage can and it's a very small footprint, don't make me to put that layer on that,
Oh no, it's absolutely optional.
Yeah. So
yeah, and even what I've been working on is not an SBOM. It is the S of an SBOM. It's so you think of it like when you DNF install or whatever bash, and then you DNF download bash and you get the binary RPM, and then you DNF download -- source bash, you get the source RPM of it.
Yeah.
So when you first DNF and install it, you don't have to get the source. It's available to you. But,
yeah.
So
yeah.
we're on top of the hour, and I'd like
Yep.
to continue this conversation because, like, from my work on Turn, I feel like these proposals are not very practical because they come from a system like distro perspective. So what about all the language package managers that people use to install stuff? What about Golang? What about the adding like random file from your host
Yep.
host machine into the container? Like the SBOM a scanner needs to handle all of these things. I mean, that's basically what I'm working on, is a scanner, and it's really hard.
Yep.
And that's why
configuration files as well.
Yeah. So this is why it's easier if there was something like the tool was able to see like a link from the image to an artifact that says, okay, that's the thing that I need to just read and munge into whatever format is required for the end user or follow-up tool. And that's okay. My concern is just this, the linking from the image to the artifact, and then are we able to have like maintain provenance of the links from the end container that you get after doing a from, for example, I'm using Docker files, but that's basically how I see the ecosystem working, is that you start from a starting image, you add your layers on top of it. The starting image has an SBOM, the layers have their own SBOM. How does that track?
So we're over. This is a great conversation. There's no way to answer or even discuss any of those without going another 10 minutes.
But they are part of the consideration, and
You're working on a document, Vincent?
I am, but it's not a design doc to that extent of how they all plumb together. Let me I'll follow up honestly, I'll follow up with you on the list about it because this maybe. What time zone are you in? Are you in Central or I thought
Pacific.
you were Pacific? You're on Pacific. Okay. And I will let me.
So I've been trying to get.
I almost feel like this should just be an open conversation time of like walking through some of the stuff, like whether it's OCI or not, because I have thoughts and like you're on point and it aligns with what I'm frustrated and trying to work through and consider.
So I've been
Okay.
trying to get a bunch of people from the various groups that talk together exactly about these kind of things. I have heard those conversations you're bringing up exactly in the various SBOM conversations, the conversations we've been having in Notary with Justin on how we would, and Sam on how we would track and link these different artifacts together in a loosely coupled way is exactly the kind of things we've been talking about. Maybe we make this for next week's agenda and actually block out time, or I think Vincent, you're almost suggesting a separate conversation.
Yeah, I'm not available next week. I mean, if somebody else chairs the call, that's fine. But I'm almost just like post something to the list, and I'll open up the bridge, and we can walk through this specifically. Maybe not quite open-endedly, but as far as time-wise goes, but to walk through some of those concerns and see how these would map together, because I think they're distinct, but they should be able to touch and relate to each other.
I'm hoping that each team can represent how they're thinking about the things that Nisha's talking about, and then we just got to figure out how they get stitched together. Like an SBOM is useless unless it's signed. An SBOM should be able to link to an artifact, which also needs to be signed. So I'll post a link to the dev alias, but something I refer to as separation of concerns on Notary that try to delegate these pieces to the individual groups that are focused on them, and then just figure out what the connecting pieces are. And I know, Nisha, you and Justin were starting to talk, so that's probably a good place to follow up.
Yeah, so I work with the SPDX, that they're part of the Linux Foundation. They are also an SBOM spec, and they're doing some work on making different SBOM profiles, and that could also be useful over here because one big concern is that the SBOMs can get pretty big as the image grows.
Yeah, so Kate from SPDX is part of the 3T SBOM group that I was talking about. And
Okay.
an SPDX Lite, I think they're referring to, is the basis of 3T SBOM. And that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure SBOMs can be disconnected so that when they do get big, I don't have to deploy that big thing down to that garbage can for the same thing we were just talking about. The source shouldn't go there, the SBOM shouldn't have to go there. And registries do support that capability. So we're just trying to make sure what don't we support to support these end-to-end scenarios. So anyway, we're over. We're way over. I know I don't want to be rude and cut off the great conversation.
Cool. All right, I'll post the recording shortly. Thanks everybody for joining. Feel free to add any lingering notes to the doc, and I'll put the link in the doc as well. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks. All right, backing.